Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Wednesday, the 20th of September. I'm Derek Clark, back after a couple of days off, and I'm delighted to say we're joined by Chris Jack. This is turning into the Chris Jack Show. Chris, you've been on pretty much non-stop this week.
Back by unpopular demand, giving the people what they don't want in the morning. But no, it's nice to be back on. Nice to see you again, Derek. We've had Ewan's company the first couple of days this week, so we're now getting ever closer to a big game on Thursday night. So hopefully it's going to be a positive couple of days of Europa League and Premiership action for us.
Yeah, big thanks to you for stepping up to the hockey the last couple of days. But as Chris says, we're absolutely looking ahead to the game tomorrow night. Rangers kick off their Europa League campaign against a decent outfit in Real Betis. Just to give you a heads up, folks, I have carried out an interview with a podcaster who covers Betis in great detail. We'll post that on the site at some point today, shortly after this video, incidentally, so you can get the lowdown on what we can expect from them. And we'll have a wee chat about Betis as well. But before we do that, Chris, of course, big news from the weekend, not just Rangers winning, but it was Danilo, of course, and his injury to his face. It was a real nasty clash that he suffered after scoring that goal. He did post on Instagram yesterday with a picture, and he said, "Back home, the recovery begins. Back on the field in a few weeks." So hopefully that is a bit of positive news, Chris. I mean, he's going to be it never rains but it pours, doesn't it, when it comes to Rangers. He scored that brilliant goal. I watched the game, and you're thinking, okay, here we go, off and running, and then he suffers that horrendous facial injury. Back in a few weeks, hopefully that is a good sign, and he can back and recapture the form that we've seen in that first 15 minutes. But he's going to be a big blow, isn't he, losing him?
The big debate last night was, well, how many weeks is a few? Are we talking 2 or 3? Are we talking 6 or 7? Are we talking longer? No, how does a man from Brazil define a few? We'll hopefully get a more precise timescale on it when Michael Beale speaks later on. His presser's at 12:45 up at the training ground, so also full coverage on the site later on. So keep an eye out for that, and hopefully there's a positive update on Danilo. As I said to you in the last couple of days in the morning, I was really impressed by him at the start of the game of the weekend. I did my piece on him for Monday morning, saying I think this is a guy that in time, give him time, he will be a 20-goal a season striker for Rangers. Just from the wee glimpses that we've seen, unfortunately, he's not going to get a chance to add to that tally over the next couple of weeks. And I think he'll be a real miss on Thursday night. He's a type of player that I think would have been a big asset for Rangers, especially when you look at the other alternatives. You maybe go and Dessers coming in. Do you go with a pacier option and give Sima a chance to the middle alongside Kamar Roof, who I think is a set-up to start? So there's questions if the manager, there's problems there for the manager to solve. Just a week after he revealed to the press that also Todd Cantwell's out for a couple of weeks as well. So another game, another big player missing for Rangers. But it is a chance for somebody else to hopefully step up. And if you are Dessers or your Sima, maybe even Sam Lammers, I think would be the most unlikely of them, but you never know. Now, what an occasion, what a stage to go and try and kickstart your Rangers career. Well, Danilo is unfortunately having to watch on from the sidelines.
Yeah, he'll be itching to get back out there after. It was a good header, incidentally. Just get to some of the comments that are coming in. First of all, Denzel says, Chris, the most overworked journalist in Europe. There you go. I think you deserve a break yourself, Chris.
I'm pleased you said overworked and not overrated, to be fair.
Good comment coming in here from Charlie Penman. He says, morning, everyone. I usually listen when I get up in the morning in St. Pete, Florida, but I'm listening live and I'm in Scotland on a holiday. Follow. Good stuff, Charlie. Good to have your company on this Wednesday morning. And Sandy Sproul gets in touch. Morning, all. Last day in Benidorm. Looking forward to Ibrox tomorrow. Aren't we all? I know things haven't been great domestically in the main, but I'm sure when the lights are turned on at Ibrox tomorrow night, Chris, Real Betis come calling her a decent outfit by all accounts. You've got a piece on the website this morning about them. I'm sure Ibrox will be up for the occasion tomorrow, do you think?
I think when the draw was made, I don't think that the fans thought the team will go and squish this group and will go and collect like 14 or 15 points from it. But I think there was a real expectation that Rangers would do very well in it, and perhaps some of the initial analysis underestimated Betis. They're a very solid side. You mentioned that piece I've got on the website this morning, Derek. Us people to go and get a read at it in a bit more detail on Manuel Pellegrini and his excellent coaching and managerial career, the way that he likes his teams to play, what we can expect from Betis, and also a wee insight into the best way that Rangers can beat Betis. And I think if they are going to get a result, as Colin Miller, the author and journalist, says in that piece, it's going to have to be the type of performance that Ibrox expects from Rangers. It's high tempo, it's high energy. It's to be cliche, it's a very Scottish performance going against a team who's technically better than us. It's a bit up and at them. That's not to say that Rangers don't have technically good players, and Michael Beale won't have a game plan. But I think the key feel of it is Rangers need to start on the front foot, not be overawed by technically superior players, and really not go gung-ho against Betis, because if you do that, you can easily get picked off. You look at some of the attacking talent in that team, especially Isco. Everybody will know all about him and will be fully aware of the threat that he poses. I think Betis do seem to be vulnerable defensively. Again, as Colin said in that piece, they can get caught up in games. He referenced the game against Athletic at the start of the season. They're 2-0 up inside 10 minutes, I think it was. Ended up losing 4-2 because they just got a bit overexcited and couldn't manage the game. So I think if Rangers can put them under a bit of pressure early on, get the Ibrox crowd behind them, which it obviously wasn't after the Old Firm game, I think that could be the best recipe for success for Rangers. I think if they're timid and they're a bit reserved and they sit off and they allow Betis the time and the space, it could be a long, long night for us, because they do have the ability to just knock the ball round about us. So hopefully it's one of these classic European nights, I say, under floodlights, good atmosphere. It's got all the ingredients for a cracking game. We just need a cracking Rangers performance now.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Let's get to a few of the comments that are coming in. Incidentally, if you want me and Chris to answer any questions, and my dog just barks at my next door neighbour outside, then get them in, and me and Chris will try and get through as many of them as possible. Blue-eyed boy says Rangers will need to be on top form tomorrow night. Couldn't disagree with that. Derek Gray with the point. The way we're playing at the moment, anything could happen tomorrow night. And Malky says it's going to be very difficult. And just off the back of that, I was reading that Betis have got a few injury concerns of their own. Chris, when you're writing your piece, is there any players that are touch and go at this point in time? Of course, Manuel Pellegrini will be given his press conference later on this evening when Betis touch down in Glasgow. But they themselves, they're carrying a few knocks, aren't they?
I think the main one for Betis is who plays in goals. Also, their first choice was taken off in the defeat to Barcelona at the weekend. And really, since then, all the talk out of Spain has been Claudio Bravo and whether he's going to be fit. Word late last night seemed to be that he would be. I'm sure Spanish journalists that are travelling and our guys at the press conference will be asking Pellegrini about that later on. If it is Bravo, he's obviously someone who's got a huge track record in the game. He's certainly vastly experienced. If it's not, and they then have to go for a third choice keeper, that then opens it up again for Rangers. You're then putting somebody in who's completely untested in that kind of atmosphere and on that type of stage with that type of pressure. So that should open things up for Rangers. But I think the Betis squad in general lost a couple of players in the summer. Sergio Canales was the big one. He moved on. They lost Nabil Fekir to a knee injury. It's unlikely he's going to play any part in these group games. So I think even though Rangers were the pot one side, I think it's very, very tight to say who the favourites for this section actually are. If Rangers are going to win it, probably will have to win tonight. If Rangers are going to just qualify, which we would all take, I think a draw probably does us tonight. I think it's important just to get off to a solid start. You need to see a performance. If we go and lose, 3 and 4 and it's a capitulation like it was against PSV, that really changes the dynamic and the mood heading into the Motherwell game at the weekend. Even if Rangers don't win tonight, there's a lot riding on the performance and the setup, how individual players perform, how the manager sets the team out, and what the kind of approach is. So even though it's a Betis side that do have struggles, it's a Betis side that do have quality. So I don't think MD will be making the mistake of turning up to Ibrox tonight thinking it's going to be a straightforward 2-0. If it does be 2-0, great. But it's MD that heads along tomorrow. Don't get don't set the bar too high because it is going to be a very difficult game for Rangers.
Yeah, I hope fans aren't turning up tonight because they'll be sitting there in the freezing cold with nothing to watch. But yeah,
that's just you want to go and watch the Real Betis press conference at 6:30.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're coming off the back of a heavy defeat at the weekend, Chris. 5-0, they get hammered by Barcelona. We know all too well, sort of reminiscent when Rangers went to Ajax to open their Champions League account after a heavy defeat in the Old Firm game. Think that could possibly have an effect, do you think, on them? It's not ideal preparation, is it?
It's not, but I think not. I'm not saying that they are used to losing games like that. Sorry, but again, one of the points that's made in that piece this morning, they are a side whose record against the bigger teams in the Liga isn't great. If they finish 6th or 7th, that's their level. They've had a really good season, and they won the Copa del Rey a couple of years ago as well. They've had some notable results in Europe.
Yeah,
but generally against your Barcelonas, Real Madrids, Atletico, they do tend to struggle, and I think they're a team. It's hard to know, almost quite like Rangers, as one of the comments said earlier on. It's hard to know what you're going to get sometimes. There seems to be a real variation in between Betis at their best and Betis at their worst. Losing 5-0 to Barcelona, I don't think is any real barometer of how they're going to fare against Rangers, just because of the levels and the occasions. It's just a very different fixture. So I wouldn't read too much into that. And I think if you're part of that Betis squad and you're Pellegrini, you almost just write that off as well. Barcelona are clearly very, very good. Going there, it's always going to be difficult. I think they'll be disappointed, but not in the same manner like Rangers losing 5 at PSV was. I think Rangers losing 5 to PSV was a bigger blow than it would be Betis losing 5 to Barcelona, just because of the levels and the expectations. So I don't see that having too big an impact on them. But if there is any fragility there, and there is any kind of players that are still smarting a wee bit, hopefully Rangers can take advantage of it.
Yeah, right. Let's get to a few of the points that are coming. There is loads of them. Incidentally, folks, when I mentioned that chat with the Betis podcaster, he sent me a video they were on. There was a documentary by the group Copa 90 on Betis that goes into detail about the history of the club and winning that Copa del Rey a couple of seasons ago. It's a very interesting watch. So it gives you a bit of an idea of the team Rangers are coming up against. Let's get to some of the comments coming in. Kev Miller raises the point. What do you think of a front three tomorrow of Sima, Roof and Matondo? We'll be up against it, and this could give us pace to counter. It's a very attack-minded front line. Chris, would you be surprised to see that line up tomorrow?
Before we came on the video, Derek, I was actually just going through my predicted team so we can get it on the website over the next couple of days, and I only picked 2 of those 3. Sima was the one that missed out for me. I think it'll be Dessers that gets the nod. I think he's more of a like for like in terms of Danilo. Also not being there. I think Roof has to keep his place. He's not done anything wrong. Played well since he's come back into the side. He's probably still the most natural finisher within the squad. And on a night where Rangers will have to take any chances that come their way, you'd back Kamal Roof to put one of them away. I think it probably comes down to Sima or Matondo in terms of just giving that out ball, somebody that you can try and hit over the top, someone that's got that pace. And I think Matondo, on the balance of what we've seen so far, probably deserves it. Took his goal really well coming off the bench at the weekend. I know Josh has been leading the Rabbi Matondo fan club in the last few weeks. People should go and check out his piece with his former Bruges manager last week as well. And I think that piece and what we've seen from Matondo just highlights that he's clearly a guy he's got something. We've not seen it often enough. I've not seen it for a long enough period. Clearly got something. And if he can produce that on a more regular basis, and importantly, if he can add that clinical edge to it, if he can add goals to his game, that's the thing that is hugely significant and hugely important for the team. So there's every chance Seema might get the nod. Actually, it was him that got the nod ahead of Dessers at the weekend when Nico had to make that change. I just think it's probably a Dessers night, and again, it could be the type of occasion that just gives him that kickstart to his Rangers career. It's not been a great start, but if he could score tomorrow night, that could be the moment that just sparks it. I think he's probably in need of it more than Seema, and I think a wee bit of backing from the manager, a wee bit of faith shown on a big European night could hopefully do the one. Hopefully do Big Dessers the world of good. So I think it'll be Dessers, Roof, and Matondo. But we picked our teams last week, and nobody had Radvan in it, and nobody had Ben Davies in it. So prepared to be surprised and amazed as always when it comes to Rangers.
Yeah, it's a big night if Dessers does get the nod. Lots of comments coming in, not too excited at the prospect of the big Nigerian international leading the line for Rangers, given his start to his career so far. Let's get to a few comments that are coming in. World's Greatest DJ says Roof has to start and Seema needs a run of games. And Hugh Dessers maybe for the hold-up as well, along with Roof and Matondo. It's an interesting point. Dessers, I agree with you, Chris. He does need that goal, doesn't he? He needs that game where he sort of sparks into life at the moment. A lot of supporters aren't having him with his performances so far. Should we read too much into the fact he never came on at the weekend? I was surprised, I've got to say, when Danilo came off. I thought it was a given that Dessers would come on and replace him. So it was a bit of I had an eyebrow raised when we seen Abdallah Seema coming on. He's another one for me, Chris. He's shown in flashes a goal against PSV at Ibrox, but that aside, he's another one that we've still to be convinced, I think.
I think he falls into the same category as Dessers, as certainly Sam Lammers, as someone who there's a bit of expectation about when they came in, and fair to say, without being too harsh on them, they've just not lived up to that expectation so far. I'm sure they'll admit that, and the manager will admit that themselves. I think I was surprised when Seema came off the bench at the weekend. I thought Dessers was the more obvious option. The manager explained it afterwards and said how they wanted to use his pace and use his running and try and get down the sides of St Johnstone. And having won the game and being comfortable in it, you have to say it worked. Only Michael will know if he made that call with perhaps one eye on Thursday night, knowing as Danilo was coming off. Probably knew there and then, like, there's no chance he's going to be available for the Betis game. Let's just keep Dessers in reserve. Whether that came into his thinking, it's only Michael will know. I think the problem that Rangers have a lot of forward players, but very few that are first names on the team sheet. There's very few you say he has to start.
Yeah.
I think Danilo, if he was fit, he'd be a certain to start. Roof, as I said, I don't think he's done anything to deserve being dropped. He'd probably start. But there's cases to be made for so many, and I think the negative side of that is because there's so many. It shows that there's so many who've still got points to prove and still got questions to answer. So I think it will be the front three I spoke about, and a couple of guys have flagged up in the comments. But don't be surprised if it is Seema that gets the nod over Matondo or gets the nod over Dessers, because I think that just sums up where they are. There's a lot of guys that need that win game, and the manager has to judge who's in the best place to produce it on this night and who can then hopefully kick on from there.
Yeah, it's a big night for many players tomorrow. Right, let's get to one or two more comments that are coming in. Denzel with a point here says, does Chris think there is a possibility of going to a proper three at the back rather than constantly improvising it? And it's a point that's raised by a few people. Steve O'Pirate also echoes that, Chris. He says, I would like to see a back three of Davis, Suter and Goldson. Our Euro tactics are clearly counter-attack, so we need to protect ourselves from the same. I think if we're going to play, we were discussing this prior to the trip to Perth at the weekend, where the Rangers would go three at the back, and I said I would have been surprised if we seen it against St Johnstone. In Europe, however, different kettle of fish. I wouldn't be too overly surprised if we did see that back three in action. I think, is it telling that we've seen Ben Davies coming back in at the weekend, Chris, that he might keep his place? I think he deserves to keep his place tomorrow night, but as a back three, the answer?
if you're going to do it, then this run, now that all three centre halves are fit, is the time to do it. I know there's talk about Dujon Sterling being able to fit in on the right hand side of that. Again, I think he's a player who's had a fairly low key start to his Rangers career. Also not had that many opportunities. But I think if you are going to move to that three, now you have Davis, Suter and Golson, there's a nice potential balance to that. Also frees up Tavernier and Barisic in an attacking sense at times as well. I think the three in the middle of the park is going to be really important on Thursday night. We need those three guys to be absolutely at it to close down the spaces and to protect the back three or back four, depending on what it's going to be. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Jack, Lundstrom and Nico Raskin that's in there. So it doesn't leave Rangers with, if that is the three, not a lot of creativity, not a lot of guile in there. If you go with the three at the back, gives you the full-backs higher up the pitch, maybe adds to the attacking sense of the side as well. So I wouldn't be surprised. And I know it's a real talking point amongst the fans. It's almost every video there's someone mentions it. Is this something? So I think it's something that the fans would like to see. I know there's a lot of discussion about how valuable it could be and how beneficial it could be. Ultimately, it comes down to manager whether he thinks it's the best way to go. As a home game against Betis, the right time to try it out when it's not been seen in public for quite some time. Perhaps not. It might be a case of stick to what you know, stick to the two fullbacks pick themselves, stick to the central defensive partnership that has had success certainly domestically over the last couple of seasons, and then rely on the midfielders to be really solid, really compact, to cover the ground and close down the spaces. I think that might be the way the manager goes. If he is going to go with this three at some point, now that Ben Davies is clearly back, he's available, he's up to speed, overall injury worries, overall talk of his future, this next run of games, if you are going to try it, now's probably the time to see it in action. And if we don't see it over the next few weeks, I think it's probably something that we can then take off the table.
Yeah, just on that back three, a few comments coming in. Scott says 3-5-2 makes us solid and compact with a good goal threat. Not everyone's too enamoured with it though. Michael says three at the back is vulnerable on the turnover and we don't have a lot of pace at the back. And potential players that could play there. Mark raises the point. Lundstrom can play his dual role, dropping back as and when needed. I think Lundstrom starts the game for me tomorrow night. I think that midfield, Chris, I think Michael Beale may go with that Raskin, Jack and Lundstrom trio in there. There was a few other comments coming in, and one I wanted to get your view on, Jose Cifuentes. Haggis Light says, where does Sifu play in this, taking us to a new level world? I suspect on the bench tomorrow as the manager will prefer Jack in midfield. If so, what was the point? My view on this one is, and I've said it in many videos, Chris, I think it's going to take the lad a wee bit of time just to settle in. A new way of life, a new country, different part of the world from where he's used to, language, all these sort of things, style of play. I wouldn't be writing off Jose Cifuentes just yet.
No, I think it's even for Rangers fans, it's probably still a bit early to be writing the boy off. As you say, Derek, I think there's other factors in play. I thought the first couple of outings that he had when he came in, he looked good. Thought PSV away, not so much. Not really been seen since. Or the manager explained pre-match on Saturday why he didn't start the game, having just come back from internationals. So I think it's harsh to say, what was the point of signing him? I know he's a player that Rangers chased for a long time. They sold him and his family and his representatives on this vision of him progressing and being part of a successful side, and then getting an even bigger move. So I wouldn't write him off. I wouldn't say just because he doesn't start tomorrow night he's a complete waste of a signing. I think for the fee they managed to get him for the interest that was in him, it could yet prove to be a bit of a coup for Rangers. But we're only going to see that longer term. I don't think you can hype him up too much. I don't think you can write him off at all. And I think he will have some part to play on Thursday night.
Just getting back to the midfield options there, a few other suggestions. First of all, just on Cifuentes, Pete Buchanan says Cifuentes need played as a box-to-box player. That's where he was playing for LAFC. I would like to see him playing more centrally, I've got to admit. And just on those midfield options, one player that I completely passed by when I was thinking of who could be lining up for Rangers tomorrow. James McLean says, has to be Lawrence, Lundstrom and Raskin. And Dublin Bears echoes that. He says, I would have Lawrence in at the centre of the park. He's a class act who can create chances. Good to see him, first of all, in the starting 11 at the weekend, Chris, after such a lengthy time out. I think Todd Cantwell's injury has given him an opportunity quicker than he would have originally had. Does look slightly off the pace, I've got to say, but that is understandable given he's been out for such a long period of time, and that will get the match sharpness back, more games that you play. Would you be inclined to start him tomorrow?
I think it's probably just too big a jump from only having a couple of appearances off the bench against County and Celtic to then getting some good minutes under his belt. Obviously, at the weekend, I thought first half he was quite off it. Second half, looked a bit sharper and a bit brighter. A nice pass for the Matondo goal, and that's the type of thing we need to see more of from Tom Lawrence. That was what he brought to the side in the first couple of weeks last season. That's why he was such a miss after he picked up that succession of injuries that kept him out for a year, unfortunately. I would be surprised if he starts tomorrow night. Again, someone who more than capable of giving us 20 minutes or so off the bench if the game requires it. But I think just in terms of having to contain Betis and get a foothold in the game, play their way into the game, not doing anything silly and find themselves 2-0 down inside 20 minutes, I think the manager will just go a bit more solid. So I think Lawrence will probably miss out on fitness and also just from a tactical perspective. But again, someone who is more than capable of coming in and doing a job, and I know how much it would mean to him. It's something we spoke to him about after the game at Ross County. He spoke at the press conference last weekend as well. He missed a lot of big games last season, missed a lot of occasions that he would have wanted to play in. One of the reasons that he came to Rangers was to play European football, played his part in getting us into the Champions League, and then also had to sit in the stands and watch that campaign unfold. And as sore as it was for everyone involved, as a player, you still want to be involved in these occasions and go and test yourselves against the likes of Napoli and Liverpool and Ajax. You want to go and test yourself against the likes of PSV and Betis. I think it's probably just a wee bit too early for him. But over the course of this campaign and in the other games, certainly in the section where there's a bit more onus on Rangers to perhaps take the game to Prague, certainly Ibrox, Limassol in both games, I would imagine. I wouldn't be surprised to see Lawrence feature in those ones, depending on where Todd Cantwell is in terms of his recovery.
Yeah, hopefully he's not too far away. We'll just wrap up, Francis, and a few others saying what time's the press conference. 12:45, the Rangers one, folks. Chris is about to hot foot it over to the Rangers training centre to speak to Michael Beale and whatever player is put up for the press. Betis get in a little later on. Their press conference takes place at Ibrox this evening. Manuel Pellegrini and whatever player that they are putting up also. Right, we'll wrap up there. Huge thanks to Chris once again for stepping up to the plate. And we'll have well-deserved day off tomorrow in the video, Chris, so you don't need to worry about getting up earlier, whatever like that. Just concentrate on the game tomorrow. I won't be speaking to you before. We may be doing a video, obviously, a team news reaction, but score prediction at this point, the Rangers getting off to a winning start, do you reckon?
That's the most difficult question I've been asked in three videos this week. There's the curveball. Let's be optimistic. Let's try and be positive and say Rangers will win 2-1.
Yeah, I'd bite your hand off right now for that scoreline, that's for sure. Okay, thanks to everyone for interacting with the show. Just a reminder, we will have the press conference from Michael Beale on the YouTube site a little later on. I will post that chat with the Betis podcaster as well to give you a flavour of the team that Rangers are coming up against tomorrow night. And there's plenty on the website. As Chris says, he's done an inside story of Manuel Pellegrini and the threat that Real Betis pose Rangers tomorrow, so do go and check it out. We'll be back again tomorrow, but until then, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Bye for now.